Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Indie Game Movement, the podcast that talks about the marketing and business of indie games. I'm Andrew Pappas. I'll be your host today, and we're going to be talking about tackling the mobile game market with effective user acquisition. So, the mobile game market has become more challenging than ever, with rising costs, increased competition, and ever changing algorithms. With so much to tackle, it can get pretty overwhelming. So, thankfully, today we're going to do a deep dive into the current issues the market is facing to uncover secrets that can elevate user acquisition and increase momentum in one of the most challenging game markets out there. So, that's what we're going to be talking about right here today on Indie Game Movement. Hey, everybody, and we're back. And today with us, I have Matej. Matej, how's it going, buddy? And thanks for being here on the show.
Thanks for having me. All good. Yeah, I'm excited to be on the show.
Well,
It's a lot of fun. I'm usually on the other side of the barricade though, so
yeah.
this is good.
Well, I'm glad that things are great and we're here with you today. And, just a, quick introduction, folks. Matej here, if you're not familiar, he is a user acquisition and marketing consultant. And, if you don't mind, give us a little insight about like some of the work that you do. And it's your own company, correct? And just share what it is you do and everything else, please.
It is. Yeah. So I've been in the gaming industry for 10 years. Well, oh, wait a second. 11 years already. Turned 11 yesterday. Okay. I
Oh,
need
wow.
to. Yeah. I started in November 11th or 12th. So it's a lot of time actually, which I just dated myself, but it's all good. I'm based in Slovakia now, actually visiting Santa Barbara, but I'm based in Slovakia. I work there in Pixel Federation, which is the biggest game dev company in Slovakia. I mean, it's like 10 of them in Slovakia, so it's not that hard to be the biggest one, but still, 50 million a year revenue, it's not bad. So I learned a lot there. I took their Facebook Canvas games to mobile, and then basically I was overseeing all the like soft launch and global launch strategies, planning and actually executing all the campaigns. And then I left the company, joined one other marketing agency that works with games, built a team, and then working with different publishers. And then I said, look, to myself, like life is short, let's try something else. And I started doing these like side jobs and hustles. So when I was at Pixel Federation, started working with different companies on the side, and different companies, different budgets, different teams. So I then moved to full-time consulting of 2018 and never came back. And it's a lot of fun. I helped 52 games, soft launch and global launch. So I learned a lot. I started my own creative team. It's like 10 motion designers now, and I have a playable team as well. And the most importantly, that's what I mentioned at the beginning. I started this like small thing which is growing like hell. It's called 2.5 Gamers, and it's no bullshit gaming podcast or show where we discuss and review games. We do it from the user acquisition, game design, and ad monetization perspective. So it's great. So I love it. I still have to get my hands dirty, and I guess that's why we're here as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. Because there's, lots we're going to talk about on, several of those fronts. And folks, again, too, Matej said, he's a host of that 2.5 Gamers podcast. And that just sounds like a lot of fun. So if you haven't, if it's not already in your library or you're not following it, I would say go ahead and do so. I haven't even checked it out myself, but I am very curious, and I hope that you guys are too. So again, Matej, thanks for sharing a little bit about yourself. But before we go into our conversation, I want us to get to know you a little bit more. So, folks, for those of you who aren't familiar, of course, we're going to have Matej go through the Q Box round, and that is just a series of a few random questions I prepared here for Matej. So, Matej, are you ready for the Q Box round?
Yes, let's do it.
Excellent. All right, first one. What's the most common mistake you see companies make in the industry with their businesses?
So they're usually looking at wrong data. First thing that I'm always keen on doing when I start working with companies is to, let's call it a data health check. Because even though you talk to people, they usually have a lot of problems in the tracking. And I do this in soft launches, in every time I run small campaigns and then compare the data between all the sources of truth to see if everything is checking. Because there's no worse thing than you looking at the wrong data and then make decisions based on those. So like and it's really common. People do it, they don't know how to do it, but then when they start talking to someone, it's actually, you can clearly see. So yeah, that's the most common thing.
Yeah, check your data, folks. And, especially when you're getting into user acquisition, that is
Yeah,
so important.
exactly.
So excellent. All right. Next is, what advice would you give to someone else that's just starting out?
Just starting out in the gaming industry, I would say, look, and not even gaming industry, just what helped me was just go out there and talk to people and meet people actually. Because, as a person from Slovakia, I started kind of attending all the conferences and started talking to people. And that's actually what resulted in the podcast afterwards, like all these discussions, which we call 4 a.m. conference discussion vibe, because that's where you get all the knowledge, all the gold nuggets from people, and they are always willing to share when you meet them face to face. So that's like the number one thing you should definitely do. Just look at the different meetups in your area, go and check, and then to meet people and just talk to them. That's definitely super helpful.
I absolutely love it because you can't go wrong with that. You really can't.
Yeah.
It opens yourself up. You learn more. Love it. All right. Last but not least, and the staple here on the show is, what game are you playing now?
Well, Pokemon TCG Pocket at the moment.
At the moment.
It's at the moment, yeah, because I play Capybara Go. I played a lot of different stuff recently, Hexasword, and all of these like different like hybrid casual, but also like the casual and mid-core games. But now, as we recorded the review of Pokemon trading card game yesterday, I'm just like really deeply into this, and I'm gonna definitely play more and more. So yeah, I love it.
Excellent. Well, good stuff here. And yeah, thanks for sharing that with us. And you know what? I'm really curious now about what you're going to share with us now as we have this discussion, which I'm sure a good number of you are super excited about. And when it comes to user acquisition, I am naturally always excited too. So that's what we're here is, tackling the mobile game market with effective user acquisition. Because, hey, look, we can acquire players and results any number of ways, but what's going to be the most effective? Well, we're going to find out. So let's just kick things off, Matej, with, what would you say is just the biggest issue currently facing the mobile game market? And why has it become so problematic?
I mean, it's not a problematic kind of UA stuff at the moment. It's just different from the years before. It's changing constantly. Like since IDFA happened, people started like doing things differently because they have to. I mean, people that didn't really change the methodology and way how to do UA, like they're kind of screwed. So the thing is like what's different and how you need to tackle the UA these days, just like let's call it UA diversification. That's what I usually do, running multiple channels at once, which wasn't really the case before. I remember the days when I ran Facebook as like the main UA user acquisition channel, nothing else. Then like Google kind of started to pop up, and then different you like SDK networks like Apple, I mean Unity, and these days TikTok, obviously, and then some other channels. Now, if you don't run basically all of them, then you're not going to go anywhere. Facebook is really struggling at the moment. Google is good on Android, but then you have iOS kind of UA operations, which Apple, I mean, is absolutely killing it at the moment. TikTok is doing really well. And like it's quite difficult for a small company to kind of like conquer all of the channels, basically. So, and it's like if people are making decisions based on like what one channel and the performance they see, for example, on Facebook. But it's then the question is it really because the game is bad or because Facebook is not always working well? That's why you run also the additional channels that you benchmarks yourself against the other UA performance. So yeah, like that's my kind of way of doing things at the moment, running 3, 4, 5 channels at the same time, even with small budget. So
Yeah,
that's
no,
where you need to go.
you make some good points because it kind of comes down to adaptation, right? Understanding what's changing and why are these things changing, and then when you get into the different platforms, it's really not just because they offer this opportunity to advertise. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a one size fits all, and it applies to, let's say, premium games. It applies to mobile games, and there's lots of different features within these platforms, and some cater better to some types of ads for games than others. So it's really about I think essentially what you're saying is understanding those and finding out what works, and not just making this assumption that we've always used this channel, therefore we should
Yeah,
just do it again and again.
exactly. Exactly. On the other hand, if you mentioned like mobile games versus also premium versus I run Steam and PC games as well, and the UA for those titles. And also, even with these titles, I run Facebook, Google, and TikTok, but in a different way. So for Facebook, it works quite well. It's just need like different campaign optimization types, and it's like a lot of like different things to unpack there. But it's like again, like yeah, it's not only Facebook, it's Google and TikTok. It's like same thing, like multiple things at the same time. So yeah, you need to kind of like open those channels.
Yeah, it's folks, we've talked about it here on the show before. It's really about taking a holistic approach. And it doesn't mean that you need a significant budget or whatever to do that. It really just comes down to having the right mindset and understanding, and then kind of like going into what those approaches may look like, within your means. Because let's face it, we do understand that you can't just go out there and spread yourself too thin, but you can take a certain approach to tackle these things, and doing so holistically is going to be the best approach, especially if it's within your means. So thanks for addressing that. And you know what, I kind of want to get into now because you know with like discuss a little bit about the problems with the mobile market, and I'm saying this like at a very high level here, just addressing some things that might concern people when they're thinking about, oh, it's so competitive, oh, there's all these other factors. And let's dive into that a little bit. So you know for example, like with the increasing costs and competition, what are you say are just some mistakes that you see developers making when they're trying to acquire new users, especially in light of costs and just a competitive landscape?
I mean, the mistake that people usually do is they kind of use wrong approach to creatives, and wrong approach meaning also the fact that what I mentioned with the data. So you need to look at the creative performance level. So what creatives bring what types of users? And back in the days when you had all these targeting options like interests or lookalikes or whatever, which was really narrowing down, kind of targeting micro segments. Now it's not the approach anymore. You need to go broad for like Facebook and all other like UA channels algorithms to work, because you need to have a potential reach pretty big. And what you basically do is your targeting is your creative, and people are not looking at the creative level enough, and then you are looking basically on the wrong data. So different creatives, meaning different types of concepts, anything from personas or even trends that are at the moment working for different types of genres, and even outside of like borrowing different trends from outside of gaming, which is definitely something that people don't do. Or they're trying, like you mentioned, like spreading thin too much on the, let's say, small budgets on so many different campaigns. You need to have a certain amount of budget per day to be able to get significant amount of numbers and significant amount of events in order to get proper results. So let's say, for example, on Facebook, you need to have 50 events in the last 7 days for the campaigns to get outside of the learning phase. If you are forever stuck in the learning phase, you will just not get anywhere. And usually people with small budgets, like they are like, oh my God, like my campaigns are not working. Yeah, of course. If you have 10 campaigns with $550 budgets per day, like it's not going to get you anywhere. On the other hand, if you consolidate and simplify the structure and you have one or two campaigns with $150 per day budget, it's going to be way better.
Yeah. And, there's so many great things that you mentioned there. And I think the key one that I want to call out to is just with the idea and concept of go broader. And because and this might sound counterintuitive, folks, but think about it this way: if you're growing a little bit broader with your budget, you're giving these platforms more to work with, so more to find, right? More audiences that you can get in front of. And if you're thinking about going broader with your creative, because I've seen it where people are like, "Oh, we're just using our branded image, and that's what we're going to use. We didn't create any other creative. We're just using this one piece of art that, yeah, now we're going to get it out there." But it's like, well, if people see that all the time, they're going to get burnt out. They're not going to care about it. We're not, that's like one side of many things that you are definitely alluding to in terms of why we got to think broader with how our creative actually works. It's a big part of these types of campaigns.
It's a big part of the campaigns, and it's also a big part of the whole user acquisition operations. You need to add new creatives into the mix so people don't see the same creative all over again. Because if they see it 10 times and they didn't convert, well, surprise, like they won't convert eventually. So you need to add new videos, new static images, new playables even, and new creatives into the mix on a weekly or bi-weekly basis to get better results and just to optimize the campaigns.
Yeah. And just a little anecdote rather. If you look at, for those of you who have like Netflix or other streaming services, if you, Netflix that I can recall in particular, if you look at all the videos that they have and all the images that they use for their movies, how often do you see them swapping them out with different ones? Because they know that if people keep seeing the same thing and they already decided, I don't want to watch it, I'm not in the mood, but if they change it, so that's something to say there. It's not just an ad thing, it's probably a human characteristic thing. So lots of insights that we can kind of take from this. Again, like thinking broader in terms of how we do things in these areas. And as Matej is definitely pointing out. So with that said, I'm also curious too. Are there like, in light of what we've been just talking about, are there any like appreciated aspects of the mobile market that developers, let's say, often overlook when they're planning their launches? Because I'm sure that there's probably lots of opportunities they're not considering.
I think soft launch process and the stage is widely underutilized, and people are just not testing enough the game before they global launch it. And meaning, like, people think after like maybe 1 year in the development, like, yeah, my game is ready now, let's go. I mean, yes and no at the same time. It's like you need to get real data from players and just open up the game in limited amount of countries just to see the data, and also like do the tracking that I mentioned at the very beginning, because it's important. And you would be surprised. I mean, obviously you don't want to hear this and see, like, if you work on the game for a year and then like the numbers are not great enough. I mean, it's tough. But then if you can see this early on, you can improve, and then afterwards, when you improve the numbers and improve the game, global launch it and get overall better results. And people usually now do it more often, but even if they do it, it's just 1 month. But in 1 month, you can't really see so much. It's like you need to stay in the soft launch a little bit longer than that. And people, yeah, I'm obviously it's not an easy and very cheap process, but think about it in this way. You put a lot of effort into the game development, and then after you want to global launch it, you put a lot of money behind the global launch without knowing even like your main KPIs. You spend the money and then you never see the money back. So it can kind of kill your company eventually. Or you prepare in advance, you see the numbers, you improve the numbers, and maybe you spend a little bit of your resources in the soft launch, but then eventually you can earn more, or just earn more after the global launch, actually.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to, provide a little bit more clarity here. When you're saying soft launch, is that, let's say, something similar to what early access is? But I also know it's going to be very different too, because of I know they have like soft launch like type setups and campaigns like through Google and in other platforms. Do you mind just explaining that briefly in terms of what some of these differences are?
Yeah, it's kind of like an early access. There is a beta program now for Google that you can open up this early access type of thing on Google, which means you won't be able to see, or players won't be able to they give you ratings and reviews, because you have the ribbon of like early access kind of on Google Play, but you can run campaigns already. So with what was before, you just put like a limited amount of countries, or the game to limited amount of countries, like let's say 5 countries, and then run campaigns there just to get the initial data. Now you can open up early access for the whole world and still get some data, and even get featured from Google or Apple, just to actually push the game and get some data in. So yeah, it's kind of like an early access. I was referring to limited amount of countries, but you can do it a little bit broader, but still limited in terms of not being able to get reviews and ratings, because that's the game. Like, it's still early on. People can share feedback, but they don't expect like the full quality of the global launched game.
Okay, cool. And yeah, thank you for sharing that, because I like sometimes, like, we all have our own different ways of interpreting things, and I'm sure you and
Yes.
I can relate with how many people call marketing hundreds of different things.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And soft launch as well. I usually run into discussions like, okay, what does the soft launch mean, and different stages of the soft launch. So I say, is a retention phase. People call it, let's say, tier 1 testing. I was like, okay, well, or whatever else. I was like, okay, we are talking about the same thing with just different terminologies.
Exactly.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
Well, all right. And, in light of these things that we just discussed, like, are there like any insights on, how these, let's say, market issues, or let's call them potential market issues, influence, the game design, or even the overall strategy? Like, these things you said, like, how is this really helping us out move forward?
So also all the changes in the market in terms of the iOS, and now Google moving into very privacy oriented era as well, it kind of changed the whole landscape of, let's call, hyper casual games, and market evolved into hybrid casual, which kind of, in terms of the game design, meaning like you are borrowing the marketability of the hyper casual games, which has very broad appeal, but then eventually implementing a very like deeper spend depth and deeper meta into the game, which then eventually means you can get more in-app revenues rather than ads revenue. And all of these, like, changing the whole hybrid casual, or the different genres basically, and like how these smaller games can actually make a lot of money. Because there was this era when like big publishers had all these hundreds of games getting like sent via like from the small developers. Now the small developers or small teams kind of understood, oh wait, we can actually do it on our own, which is, and because we know how to make games. Now we see all these small teams making a lot of money, because they understood this is now possible. Always not easy as it was before, but still, like, it's kind of possible. So all these like outside market changes, like, is they're doing favors to like smaller teams. Like bigger like companies, they're not agile and enough just to
Right.
just to adapt to like what's happening around us at the moment.
Yeah. I think that's an important point to make too, because for all this out there that are, small studios, indies, solos, and whatnot, we tend to think like, oh, we're at a disadvantage. But if you put on the flip side, you have a huge advantage, because, like Matej said, like, people, like, bigger companies aren't as agile. They can't stop on a dime and go and pivot and go in a completely different direction. And these platforms and everything else, there's just so much more. And yes, the competition increases a bit, but there's just so much more that's accessible to you now than you ever had in a while. And that accessibility keeps growing. So with these understandings and all these other things, I mean, it does put yourself at probably a much bigger advantage to tackle some of these opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, think like what happened with iOS. So I usually work with small to mid-sized companies. I mean, obviously working with the big ones as well, but more with small ones and mid-sized. And we found out that, like all these iOS changes, you had to figure out like some conversions schemas and frameworks, and change few things in the onboarding, just to get like more events on day one. So we then tested out one, let's say, special offer, which was 99 cents, and A/B tested, and because we were kind of worried that it will cannibalize the later revenue. But we tested it out, and it wasn't. And we implemented this special offer in the game, and then eventually that helped me on the UA side to get more signals to Facebook, Google, or whatever else, all the UA channels, and that kind of helped me to drive like profitable UA on iOS. This is not possible with big company. It's like this is not possible. Oh, we have all these pipelines. We need like it will take 6 months. Like guys, I understand. It's like, but on the other hand, I don't understand. But there you go.
Yeah,
This is
and
how it is always.
I and you're right. I've experienced this firsthand too, where there's that lack of understanding, and it's not so much that people aren't capable of understanding these things. It's just the system is too big. It's already going, and to stop it and to re-gear it and all these other things, there's going to be a lot of downtime, and bigger companies can't do that. And to your point, so it's
Yeah.
it's really cool stuff. Now, I'm curious too, because we're getting into a little bit deeper stuff, and there's a great segue into kind of talking about effective user acquisition. So, in light of where we're at right now in the conversation, what would you say are the most effective yet maybe lesser known UA, or as in user acquisition tactics that have worked for your clients? Because I'm sure there's lots of things we can consider using.
Yeah. I mean, yes and no. Because if you asked me this like 2 years ago or 4 years ago, I would say, oh, there's so many things that you can do. Now it's more about creatives. I not now, but it's like it's becoming more and more about creatives, because if you want just set up a campaign, you can do it in 10 minutes. I mean, maybe I can do it in 10 minutes because I worked in the UI for 11 years, but still, it's not rocket science. It's the kind of the most important part is to know which channels, what kind of creatives, and what kind of optimization on the campaign level you should use. And it differs from game to game. So let's take this hybrid casual genre that I was talking about. You have 50% ad revenue coming from ads, and then you have 50% revenue coming from in-app purchases, which is for the UA person kind of, I called it always a wet dream, because you can do so many things on the campaign optimization. So you can try and find players optimizing for purchases and value for payers, and also at the same time you can optimize for ad revenue and ad ROAS, which means you're optimizing for, let's call it ad well, so people that kind of watch ads a lot, and you can earn a lot of money. This is like two different ways and tracks that you can use. Also at the same time, Apple, I mean, and Google and Unity has this option of hybrid ROAS, which is blended ROAS, which is taking the best out of both worlds, optimizing for ad revenue and in-app revenue at the same time. So you have these three different kind of tracks that you can optimize for. You can't do this for casual games that don't have ads. You can only use in-app purchase. So all of these different things in combination with using different creatives and playables gives you so much more options. So, and again, like, but you can set things up in 15, 20 minutes. But the tactics, or not the tactic, but this is like, if I was in this situation like a million times before, so I already know what to do when I see the game and when I see different things. So for hybrid casual games, this is great. For casual games, you have Facebook, TikTok, Applavin, which works well. You need to, well, the best tactic for running outside, like UA outside of Facebook and Google, is to focus on playables. Because if you don't have playables in the UA mix, or in the creative format mix, you won't be able to like scale or get quality users. On Facebook, that doesn't work. On Facebook, for now, for me, what works is, let's call it like static AI images. I actually go to Midjourney, prompt 10 different images in 5 minutes, boom, adds to the campaigns, works amazing. It's like all of these like small things here and there.
Yeah, no, and you know what? Again, I love this, because we don't always think this way as how important it is, but like you were leading with creatives, and great examples too, in terms of how across different platforms that creatives can make a huge difference. Especially, like, it's funny you share that, and everybody out there, if they did some quick research and over the past few years, would probably say, like, let's just take one of the examples you shared, like Facebook, and hey, video is dominating the internet, and yes, it very much is, but for whatever reason, and I see this myself too, static still works so really well. It's
Yeah.
amazing. It's somewhat mind-boggling. And then you're talking, so like again, understanding the creative, understanding maybe the different nuances between these platforms and everything, and but that's not to say that playables, which I'm assuming is like in-game footage essentially in clips. Um,
Yeah, you just kind of like give the user a teaser,
yeah,
like okay, like just let's call it a mini game of like okay, well, I usually use like tutorial from the game, like okay, well I play, click here, click there. Oh, this is actually fun. Okay, let's download, and it increases the conversion to install, and also people already kind of taste what they're gonna play, and then it kind of increases the retention afterwards as well.
oh, right, and I'm jogging my mind here, and it's coming back. But playables, I believe, at least to some offerings in the mobile market, are you can actually play the game, but it's a tiny little
Yes,
snapshot teaser, like you were sharing.
exactly.
Got it. But
Yeah, exactly.
so, but again, it's like all these formats and things, and depending on what's available, what's not, they all differ in terms of what's going to be effective. But at the end of the day, we're still talking about creatives right now.
Yeah,
and and
yeah.
and and seeing what works and what resonates with people. I mean, that is so important. And it's not just about with ads. I think that's what the problem a lot of us have. We think, oh, we've got money, we can throw it at something to scale, and then we're like, all right, let's check out and come back in a week. That's not the right approach.
That's not the right approach. Yeah. But also, like, the right approach is just to be a little bit more effective. And as I said, like, look, you said it as well. Static still work. It's just going to be a different types of UA operation. If it's static images, it's easy to make or easier to make, but you need more. You need more of them, and you need to change those static images more often because, yeah, the creative fatigue hits hard on static images because people see and then they just move on, and the frequency increases quite rapidly. With videos, it's a little bit different. But honestly, on Facebook now, and if you have all the AI tools out there, and that's like those are my best friends now. Honestly, as a UA
Yeah.
manager,
There's
oh my god, I use it so much all the time, and that's what works. If you have this conversation in 2 years, it's gonna be something different. On 2 years, 2 weeks,
yeah.
or 2 weeks. Oh my god, 2 years in the UA. Oh my god, like that's a far future.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Wow.
Okay, well, you definitely gave some great examples, I think, how, creative can make an impact and stuff. Are there like any other types of examples of, let's say, optimization strategies that you use that helped really boost like ROI, or specifically probably ROAS, return on ad spend, for mobile games? Like what else is out there in addition to, what you shared about creative?
Yeah, I usually combine the different types of creatives with either purchase optimization or the value optimization I mentioned. So, like the days where you just launched mobile app install campaign and optimized for app installs,
Hmm.
that's not going to work if you want to get payers into the game. Maybe it's going to work for very, very limited amount of time, which is like not even a week. But then you need to move towards optimizing for purchases and the value, which means in this kind of case, like whales. So like high quality or high paying users. And like that's the only two optimizations that I used. I tried different like events based on the, let's say, level played, games, minutes played in the game, whatever else. It's great for retention, but then eventually not for monetization that much. And honestly, yeah, like I mean, you can't pay bills with retention. So
Yeah, but I mean that's a good point though, and kind of goes into other elements in terms of, our understanding of data, what it is, and what these, like how it can help infer, the objectives that we create. Because you're right, I for the longest time, and maybe people still think about, oh, it's about app installs, that's the key thing. But then it's like, well, depending on what your monetization strategy, where's the money, right?
yeah,
so
yeah,
so if
where's my money?
now, if it's a premium product and there's no in-app purchases, okay, maybe that is
Yeah,
a direct, objective you want to look at. But if there's other, for whatever that monetization strategy is, you got to look at that data, or at least understand what data you need to acquire in order for
Exactly.
that end result to happen. And
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
and I
It's all
love that you
comes down
call
to
that out.
money.
Yeah. Well, like, where's the money, right?
Yeah. I mean, as bad as it sounds, it's just this is the fact. Like it's a gaming industry, but it's still a business.
Mm,
If you don't make money, your company is not in the business anymore, unfortunately. So like you need to live from something, and it's a business. Like people forget about this. Like it's yeah. We play games. Yes, we like playing games. It's still great. It's fun, but it's business. It's very
yeah. Yeah.
important that people understand like it's actually about like making money.
Yeah, absolutely. And I get it, folks. Like sometimes like that might not seem like a possibility at whatever your stage at that you're in currently, or even later it might feel different. But I mean, there's lots of ways you can approach it to look at it from a business, but still have these drivers and motivations and passion back behind it too. Because, they can't one can't live without the other. Because if you're in it just for the money, it's not going to be fun, and it's not going to sustain you, right? But if you're doing it on just passion, well, then that's not sustainable either. You got to have that
Yeah.
balance.
Yeah, the thing is, I just met with one lady who was in UA before and now working on a game. It's it said like yeah, it makes some money, but still need to get some like side projects to actually have the lights on until the game is actually ready to make money. Because yes, it's great. It's also like people make games out of passion, and like oh, I just want people to play the game. Yes, but you need to make the money out of it as well. Like
Yeah,
that's it.
absolutely. And as we're talking about these like different perspectives and approaches and everything else, just before we close here, I'm just curious, like, how would you say, like, how should developers think about everything from channel diversification and even experimentation, especially when budgets are limited? Because again, I mean, we mentioned it before about this whole idea of being holistic, and it's important, but how should we approach this as we're understanding this idea of being holistic, especially when funds are limited?
Yeah, well, funds are always limited, which is
Yep.
a good now. But the thing is, like, it's a good thing and a bad thing at the same time. Good thing is because if you're kind of you don't have enough money, you need to find creative ways how to make things work, and that opens up so much creativity on your end. You can't even think about it. So this it's a good thing. How you can use like the UA, like the channel diversification and everything, it's you group things together and simplify stuff. So when I'm talking about this, for example, Facebook campaign, you go and set up one campaign which targets US tier one countries, UK, Germany, Canada, whatever else, you name it, like 5 to 10 geos in one campaign, and then target the whales, the value optimization, and just put 3 to 5 creatives in there and leave it for like $100 or $150 per day. And you do the same thing on Google, you do the same thing on TikTok, for example. If you don't have enough money, you do Google and Facebook. And you go from there. And then you see when your money is coming back from those campaigns, which can be in 7 days, 14 days, 30 days, depends on the game managing. And you start increasing the budget on these campaigns. And then go from there. You open up TikTok, you open up Unity, you open up the other things, you add more geos into the campaign, or you create a new campaign with new geos. You just start small and then just go from there, like step by step. That's it. That's it.
Yeah, and I mean, and doing those things too. And here's the thing: it's looking at it from a perspective of, and this is where ROAS, return on ad spend, is so important, because starting out small, you can start getting in information in, like, hey, we're hitting, probably the goal is at least 200% return on ad spend. So for every dollar you're spending, you're making two, right?
Yeah.
And then from there, when you start seeing that those numbers are being hit, as Matej said, now we can start scaling more. Okay, now we're hitting this number. Now we're getting like 2.25, 2.5, whatever. We're increasing that percentage, that metric. And now it's like, okay, now we can scale more. And that's probably I mean, it makes sense. It's was it Warren Buffett, I think, kind of did that with when he was a kid or early in life. I heard it was arcade machines, but I could be wrong, or just coin operated stuff. It's like once one starts paying for itself, then you get another and another, and
Yeah.
it's a strategy not very different than basically how a lot of things done, real estate and all these other
Yeah, of course.
concepts.
Yeah, it's just it's investment. It's investment.
Yeah,
That's it. Like,
but that's what it comes down to, especially in these cases. And hey, again, in what we're talking about here, it's a simple concept, but if we even within limitations, we discussed plenty of times on the show here where lots of creativity can happen. Look at how what these limiting factors are, and what can you take and be very creative with and effective with. And I I mean, you tell me, Matej, or tell us, like, that's one of the best approaches that you can take to be as effective as possible, is really understanding these things and doing what you can to be creative.
yeah, and also look, if you don't have enough money, there are always the ways how to like get users into your game. So look, I've seen great success on TikTok, like organic posts, because TikTok algorithm kind of works well still, and you can get the viral hit of your video easily. Well, not easily, but easier than the other channels. And you just tackle that. That's the first thing. Then you can go. There's like hundreds of millions Discord servers with a lot of communities where you can go and ask, like, hey guys, look, this is my game, can you provide feedback, or you wanna play this? And you start building this community maybe on your end as well. Again, easier, like, then like still, like, it creates a lot of different activities, and kind of creates like enough not enough budget, creates this like trying to find different pockets of users that come into your game, rather than just spending money from the get-go immediately. But still, you will eventually need to go there and try to spend at least something for the very beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. So, folks, there's so many other opportunities out there. We just sometimes need to take a different approach and how we do those things, because when we do, that's when we're going to find all sorts of doors and opportunities open for us. So, hey, this has been awesome, Matej. I really can't thank you enough for being here. But before we go, from what we discussed today, what are, let's say, some tips or recommendations, suggestions that our listeners can take away from our conversation?
So I would say, well, humbly enough, join our Slack 2.5 Gamer Slack channel. There's 2,500 people that are actually discussing all different sorts of things, UA, game design, and monetization related, that you can learn from, which kind of piggyback on my first comment about like going out there and just talk to people. So that's the first thing. Then exploring like the small communities I mentioned now, which like adding TikTok to your game, go to Reddit threads, open up these Discord channels as well, and just to get things going. And then, yeah, I think you should play a lot of games, because there is so much inspiration on the creative front that you can get out of these games. I usually use that as well in my creative approaches and creative concepts, which is kind of simple enough. You just need to, I mean, I don't really see people in gaming industry not playing games. I mean, there is a lot of people that don't play games, but it's like endless source of inspiration. Endless. And it's easy because it's free. You can play easily.
Yeah, exactly. Well, hey, such great things there. And again, I love that closing one. There's just so much inspiration out there, folks. There's no limit on that. So between reaching out to people and playing more games, you're gonna then it's just a matter of taking these ideas and executing on them. So don't get too crazy with the ideas, I guess.
Obviously. Yeah. Obviously. No, but honestly, crazy ideas always get you a little bit further than not crazy ones. I love crazy ideas. I do a lot of crazy stuff on the creative side and on the stuff. So yeah,
Yeah, because crazy is how
be a
you
little
can
bit more
stand out, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
awesome.
Yep. Very
Well,
true.
Matej, thank you so much for being here today. And before we part, I mean, what are some links or ways that people can reach out and connect with you?
Thanks, Andrew, for having me. It was fun, and it's good to be again, like I said, on the other side of the barricade. So, and Having said that, so there's a 2.5 Gamers podcast and show on YouTube and Spotify. I'm on LinkedIn as well, so please add me. And I have a Substack, which is my last name.substack.com. And there's like a newsletter, which is called Brutally Honest, all things UA, and will be the fun at the same time. And yeah, that's it pretty much.
All right, excellent. So folks, again, sign up for that, Brutally Honest newsletter to check out the site. All these things will be in the show notes. And of course, the 2.5 Gamers podcast. Matej, it's been great. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your insights with the community.
Thanks, Andrew. Pleasure.
Hey, everyone. Thank you for listening to another episode of Indie Game Movement. I'm Andrew Pappas, your host, and the show's producer is Mustafa Price. Show notes for this episode can be found by visiting rengenmarketing.com, the number episode of the show. Rengen Marketing is a consulting marketing company that helps indie devs with their marketing efforts. Whether you need guidance with your game's marketing strategy or could use a free marketing plan template, then please visit www.rengenmarketing.com and take action. A special thanks to Dakota Saab for Season 2's opening theme and Melissa Gellis for the new logo design. And as always, thanks for being such great listeners, and we'll see you next time on Indie Game Movement.